Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marketers Talking Marketing Over Coffee. I'm pleased to have Rand Fishkin as our inaugural guest. Rand is the founder of Moz and a thought leader in the digital marketing space and has been for the last 10 to 15 years. Rand, thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited to have you. Many marketers know who you are, but for those that don't, can you give me a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. So I started a company that eventually would be called Moz. Started that company back in 2003 with my mom, Jillian. And over the next 10 years, 15 years, that company became one of the fastest growing software as a service uh, marketing companies in the certainly in North America, maybe in the world. And then a few years ago, I stepped down as CEO, and for the next couple of months, I'm still an individual contributor at Moz to product strategy and marketing, those kinds of things. And then I'll actually be starting a new company in a couple of months here. And I've done a bunch of other things. I also co-founded Inbound.org with Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot, and a lot of folks know me from Twitter and from my personal blog, as well as lots of speaking events and travel all around the world.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the purpose of creating, this particular video series in general was really, with social media out there and there's so much noise, it's often difficult for brand new marketers that are just coming into not only the digital marketing space, but marketing space as a whole to identify and learn from true experts. There are a lot of people that come out and say, hey, we're an expert, and you never know who to believe and who not to believe. And so kind of what the premise of this video series is to interview well-known, thought leaders in the industry so that we can provide that resource to those newfound marketers.
Sure, makes sense. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I've made many mistakes, and hopefully I can help folks not make the same ones I have.
Well, great. Well, my first question for you, and it's one I've always kind of wondered myself, having followed you for so long. Who would you consider to be your single biggest influencer as a marketer?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. I think probably it's hard to say that it's not family, right? I think in my case, probably my biggest influencer in my life is Geraldine, my wife, and that certainly had a big impact on me professionally as well. But outside of that, in the professional space, I think one of the people that I followed very early in my career and for a long time, and then have had a sort of friendly acquaintanceship with over the last few years is Seth Godin. Okay. And he and I share a lot of beliefs about how marketing can and should work, right? That relationships are there to be earned. That one of the best ways to sell is not to sell anything. That being unique and having uniqueness as part of your product and your brand is a wonderful way to stand out. That building a small but passionate tribe is more powerful than having a big audience that doesn't care much about you.
Sure.
So there's a lot of ethos sharing that he and I have.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, honestly, Seth is somebody that, obviously I follow a great deal about. I actually just recently watched I guess he just recently did a keynote speaking event, and I can't remember what the actually event was, and he spoke to a lot of those same concepts that you just mentioned. And so, yeah, he's a great follow. Not to take away from that, I honestly thought you were originally going to go, just based off my past experience of seeing you and talking, that you were going to talk about your mom. And I know she's probably been a major influence on you as well.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I recently rewatched an interview that you had done on Mixergy from years back. And for those that haven't seen it, I'll link to it in the diatribe below. But in that interview, you opened up about, in that consulting business that you and your mom were working together on, that you ended up in almost $500,000 in credit card debt.
Right.
What did you learn about those mistakes from that time frame, and how did you use that from a positive standpoint to make sure you didn't follow down that same rabbit hole with Moz?
Well, so that company is the same company that became Moz eventually, right? I mean, we shuttered the old company and sort of started a new one, a new LLC at the time, but it was merely a continuation, right, of the same services we've been providing to clients and that kind of thing. I mean, the biggest lesson there was just that there were a lot of things that we tried that we thought would be effective to earn us business or retain customers, and they were not, because I think they were just window dressing, right? So let's get fancy office space. Let's make sure we have substantive staff, which at the time meant 5 people instead of the 2 of us. Let's make sure we're going to trade shows and setting up booths. And I think in each of these cases, right, what we learned is you can have a scrappy, cruddy office above an old dingy movie theater, which is where we moved to, and it was plenty loud. But that doesn't matter as long as your work is good, right? And you don't have to go to trade shows and exhibit in the booth if you can produce content that is so interesting and useful and valuable that you're invited to speak on the stage, right? And you don't need a big staff so long as you yourselves can accomplish the work, right? And you can wait to hire until you have the clients and the money coming in. So, a lot of things about just the basics of operating a business that I think we didn't get right. I don't think there's a ton of deep, powerful learnings there, other than, well, I was real young and real dumb.
Right. Yeah. And I think you pointed out a couple of things that kind of really resonate with us as well. And ultimately, it comes down to better understanding your clients and your customers so that you can produce those results for them. Again, like it's less about the flash. It's more about, at the end of the day, what can we do to help you achieve your goals, right?
Absolutely.
And so obviously Moz is in the software as a service business. And knowing that, what strategies or tactics have you guys used to better understand your customers?
Gosh, yeah. Well, I would say a lot of things over the years. And I'm going to have more familiarity with this sort of, a few years ago in the decade past than the last couple. But some of the biggest and most powerful for me were spending real in-person time doing work alongside people who are our customers, or who we wanted to be our customers. And so, one of the more outlandish things that I did on this front was I spent a week in something that a friend of mine and I did called CEO Swap. So basically, Will Reynolds, who's the owner, the founder of an agency out in Philadelphia called Seer Interactive. I think they're probably around 130, 140 people now. I think they were just around 75 when I was CEO for a week.
Okay.
We lived in each other's houses for this week. I took care of his dog. I went to his charity events, and I went to work, right? I answered his email. I was on all of his phone calls, and I got sort of training from his team and spent, real time digging into client projects for them. And that helped me to see a lot of things about how they did their work, what kinds of software and tools they use, when they didn't use tools, what manual processes could be replaced with automated ones, what data they needed, how they investigated whether data was accurate, all those kinds of important things. I think, being able to empathize with your customer by having their same problems
Sure.
Is a really powerful thing.
Right.
I don't know that I have anything better that I've done over my career to get inside the heads of our customers than that. But, there's lots of other things that we do. So I mentioned to you early on that I do a lot of conferences and events, and certainly when I'm there, I try to spend a lot of time watching other speakers, seeing what they're talking about and using and showing off, as well as talking to folks in the audience and seeing what they're doing, and stopping by booths and seeing what software providers are offering and those kinds of things. We also Moz has a formal usability testing program where we invite folks into the office, and we also do remote, screen sharing usability tests and surveying and all the sorts of things that you might expect of a mid-sized software company. But I really like having those personal relationships.
Yeah.
I think there's no substitute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you're able to take all of that information and obviously use that to not only develop the products but actually market it to that correct audience, speaking to those pain points that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, hopefully. I think one of the tough things is, and I think this is just the way people are wired, right? As an organization scales, it starts to build processes, and a lot of times the processes require like statistically significant data, right? So, oh, we conducted 10 usability tests, and 2 people told us that this wording, this language was confusing for them, or they didn't know what it means. And so that crosses our threshold of we need to change it, as opposed to, well, I spent a ton of time with these people.
Right.
Everyone will get it. It'll be fine, right? Like, this is the right language to use.
Sure.
And getting folks to trust intuition over data in a design process is very easy when you're small and very difficult when you're larger. So I think that one of the things that I would say for product designers and for folks who want to build something in the software space, and even for marketers who are trying to build projects for their clients, you have to decide how much you want to be artistic and internally driven, right, by your preferences and experiences and know-how, and how much you trust either yourself or your team to do that, or how much you want to build process into the system so that you have more statistical types of data and rules around those. And I'm definitely someone who operates better in the strong intuition. In my opinion, is better than a data heavy process.
Sure.
But
to each their own.
Scholars disagree, right?
Yeah, right.
Scholars are divided on this.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I've always kind of wondered, I've been in the SEO industry now dating back to roughly 2004, 2005. And back then, and even before then, everything was so secretive.
Yeah.
It still, to some extent, is. But one of the main reasons I've grown personally in the digital marketing and SEO spaces is because of you. You were arguably the first public figure to be open about what works and what you've learned along the way. And so first off, thank you. In some ways, do you feel like that transparency that you've instilled has been a marketing tactic that's actually helped Moz grow to what it is today?
Yeah. I would say transparency has strengths. It also has plenty of weaknesses and drawbacks too. And the reason Moz does it is not, or the reason Moz did it, during my tenure there, was not because it was a tactic or it was strategic, but because it was a core value.
Sure.
Right? And I think that a core value is something that you are willing to sacrifice even when it harms the company. And you value it above money, above growth. And that is certainly true for us and transparency. Well, I should say was true for us in transparency.
Right.
I think as Moz is evolving kind of in the future, as I move on to other places, I think that might change for sure. But it's a tough call. So I think transparency, by being very open, especially early on, right, in the SEO world, when things were so secretive, when so few people were willing to be transparent about what worked and what didn't and why, and the hows behind things. I mean, Google was extremely secretive. The other search engines were too, because they were all in sort of this war against each other, and so they didn't want any of their secret sauce leaking out. That time period made it incredibly frustrating to learn the practice of SEO, or to know if you had hired a good SEO, if you could trust the person that you had hired to do SEO. And search was this incredible channel, still is, incredible channel for driving traffic, but was so obscure and inaccessible that Moz's, at the time, right, my personal blog's transparency really made a huge dent.
Right.
And it's been interesting to see there's drawbacks to that too. So, over time, Moz has had a number of copycat competitors, right? And folks get into the field because they sort of saw, we publish our revenue numbers, we publish our all of our SaaS metrics numbers, we publish how exactly we collect all our data and what we do, and so we're a very, very easy company to reverse engineer. And I think certainly some folks took advantage of that. Some have even built on top of it very effectively. But this was a trade-off we were always willing to make.
Right.
So it's it's something for everyone to choose. But can transparency be a great marketing tactic? It can.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, from my perspective, I think it's helped you guys tremendously. Obviously, that's what drew me to you guys. That's what drew me to you. And so, and I've appreciated it throughout these years. One of the things that I actually, according to the Moz Reader Survey, I think y'all just did, a week or two ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
One of the greatest difficulties faced by SEOs, particularly, is explaining its value and also properly setting the expectations of the results. I know it's something that we deal with as an agency, on a daily basis ourselves. And so I'd love to hear it from your opinion. How can this be done effectively?
Yeah,
it's like a $1 million question.
So I think one of the challenges is so much of digital advertising, right, where you pay and traffic comes to you, is incredibly measurable because the channels that offer it, right, so Google's ad platforms and Facebook's ad platforms and Twitter's and all the rest, they have a huge vested interest in making sure that you can clearly, obviously see and easily calculate the return on your investment. Organic is just the opposite, right? Google wants to make that very difficult for you to invest in so that you'll spend money on paid search instead, right? And not try so hard to game their systems and not try so hard to rank because they kind of prefer that you just took a hands-off approach and let them figure it out in a lot of ways. And so this is an adversarial form of marketing intelligence that we're trying to get to. And that's at the core of the difficulty. So for example, every time Google sends you a visitor in AdWords, they will tell you exactly what keyword that visitor searched for, what position you were when they clicked on you, which version of your ad was showing, what they did on your website after that visit, all these things, right? Incredible trackable. If they come from organic search, they'll tell you, well, they landed on this page.
Right.
The rest is up to you.
Right.
Like, good luck with that. They took away keyword data through the not provided fiasco, which I think was a bunch of hypocritical crap. But the way to get this data back is to build sophisticated models, and unfortunately that requires some investment, but it is totally possible. So in the weeds of it, we can say, hey, look, we can show you when visitors come to your website from organic search, here's what happens next, right? Here's the percent of them that come back for a second visit or come back for more visits in the future. Here's what percent of them eventually make a conversion action, right? Buy something or give you their email address or sign up or do whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do on your website. And so now we can quantify organic search as a channel and say, hey, all organic search is valued at X. And we can try and get more sophisticated by reversing out, branded search keywords, the ones for which your homepage or product pages are most likely to come up versus the non-branded searches where, you're really competing against everyone else in those SERPs. And as you get those levels of sophistication, you can try and show that data more and more clearly. But I think the process of explaining this to clients is the tough one, right? It's that first conversation of, this will be hard to measure. We're going to have to do a lot of work to do it. Because it's hard to measure, fewer people will invest in it. That means the competition is less and the potential return on investment is much higher than it would be with paid search or any other form of paid advertising. And convincing a client to say, oh my gosh, you're right. That's such a powerful opportunity because it's so difficult to measure. I think that's where the eureka moment can come in. But you have to earn that buy-in through those early conversations, right? It has to be a sort of strategic, thoughtful exercise where they get their minds over it at the highest levels of the company, so that they believe in you and they say, yeah, we'll give you 6 months to show the ROI that you're going to show us.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things too, and that's not just with us. I think that's the case with pretty much any agency out there. It's all about having those conversations on the front end to be able to set those expectations. And sometimes the client may not be worth or may not be the right client for you, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the great conversations to have early on is to say, now, you've got this budget. We can invest it in paid channels. They're high competition. The ROI will be lower, but it'll show you returns right away, and we'll be able to track in detail everything that it's producing. So if you really, if you're very addicted to those numbers, you need it early on. You need to be able to show returns really quickly. Let's do paid. However, if you'd like to have a conversation about organic, just be prepared. It's going to be 3 to 6 months of investment before it starts to show return. It's going to be tough to measure. We're going to show a lot of correlated metrics, but it's not going to be, directly causal the way paid is, because we can't track on a one-to-one basis in the same fashion. So which one do you want to invest in?
Sure.
Right, and having them choose. No, we want the lower ROI channel that makes us feel more secure. Or yeah, we want to, we're up for the challenge. Let's take some risk. Let's go for this bigger opportunity.
Yeah, and I think just yesterday I saw that you had posted all that data from Jump Shot, and so it appears that organic is still far superior to the paid in terms of even with Google's recent changes on adding a fourth ad to the top and moving it from the right rail to straight on top. That organic is still leading the way by a vast margin.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the fascinating part of Google's journey over the last 15 years, is that while Google has gotten more and more and more aggressive about the advertising, where it appears, how subtle it is compared to the organic results, all those other kinds of things, the click-through rate, at least broadly speaking, on ads versus organic has remained really similar, right? So, I mean, I showed charts yesterday that were basically, I think over the last 2 years, we've essentially had a stable amount of paid clicks per 10 search queries across Google.com, at least in the US, where the advertising is most aggressive.
Right.
And organic results, it was I think around 7 clicks per 10 queries, and now it's down to about 6.6 or 6.5. So it's a little bit lower than what it was 2 years ago, but still 20 plus times as much as paid.
Sure.
Right. So if someone says to you, "Oh, I really want to invest in search. Should I do paid or should I do organic?" I think the smart answer is probably both. But just be aware that paid drives, across Google drives, 5% or fewer of the clicks that organic does.
Right. Yeah, and I think one of the connections that you made, it kind of leads to one of my next questions, is that even though there was a drop slightly in terms of, from 7 out of 10 down to 6.6, that some of that correlation is due to some extent, featured snippets and providing those answers on the front end, and users
Right.
not having to click on the listings themselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it's not that people are clicking on paid more; they're clicking on paid just about the same amount. It's that they are clicking overall less because Google is answering so many queries right in the search results. And so the percent of searches without any click has gone up, I think, around 20% over the last 2 years. And it's now just under half of all queries are essentially solved without a click.
Right. Yeah, and now I'm asking you to kind of put your Nostradamus type of hat on here.
Yeah.
Obviously, with voice search in its infancy, what role do you think it'll play in the future? Meaning, do you think it'll start accounting for a larger portion of queries than what it does now?
So voice search, my perspective on voice search is I don't really care, and it doesn't matter. The reason being that whether you input, if I take my mobile device and I type in my query, or I say, "Okay, Google, what is blah blah blah?" If they show me results on a screen, a desktop, a laptop, a mobile screen, a tablet screen, whatever it is, it doesn't matter how the query was inputted.
Sure.
Right? What matters is how the query results are output. Now, what I worry about, where I have great fear, is voice answers. So voice search, doesn't matter.
Sure.
Voice answers, I think that's a real cause for concern. And basically, one of the reasons that we looked at this jump shot data and asked them to collect it is because we want to say, hey, over the last 2 years, we've seen a huge rise in voice answers, right? Voice applications, Alexa and Google Home and all these types of things. And so we want to know, are searches that result in a screen of results, are they going down over time? And the answer is no, they're still going up, right? We're about 15% higher year over year this year than last year, and last year than the year before. So growth continues. It looks to us like voice answers and all these home devices and that sort of thing are additive, not cannibalistic.
Gotcha.
Which, interestingly, that's the same thing that happened when mobile came out and around desktop. So desktop and laptop searches, they plateaued in about, I think, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. And they've been growing, but only very, very slightly, right?
Sure.
But mobile has continued to grow very dramatically. And I think we're going to see the same thing with voice answers, that search will plateau, it'll level off. I don't know if the growth rate will stay 15%, maybe it'll drop to 10%, whatever it is. But I suspect voice answers will just be additive on top of everything else.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. For a great deal of time, and probably still, links have always been, one of those larger ranking factors in Google. Do you feel like, obviously, you termed that phrase user task accomplishment? Do you feel like that is starting to overtake, or has it already overtaken the power of links? I mean, I feel like there's a good balance. You kind of have to have a strong correlation of both to really succeed online now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Right, you need both to succeed. Right now, links, at least in competitive search results, are still a big differentiator. So thinking or assuming that you don't need links or you can stop caring about them is a fallacy. That is even more true in non-English language Google search. So, you get outside the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you're going to find that it's even more the case that links are like the overwhelming ranking factor in a lot of these places. But, that being said, I do see searcher task accomplishment as on the rise. Certainly 3 years ago, we were barely thinking about it.
Right.
And today, I think any SEO who doesn't include it as part of their on-page optimization strategy is doing themselves or their clients a disservice.
Sure.
So we'll see over time. One of my suspicions is that a good way that Google figures out whether a page solves a searcher's query comes from the links, right? So by solving searchers' queries well, you earn links that Google can interpret as votes for, this helps me accomplish this task. So I'm not sure that those will ever become entirely disconnected.
Sure.
But I think we still have, I can't imagine we have less than 3 or 4 years left where links continue to be a very powerful signal.
Sure. One thing that we specifically, and I'd love to kind of get your input on it, just from having run Moz for as long as you have. One of the things that we sometimes have difficulties with, especially as we hire new employees or new employees, even employees that stay with us for some time, it's the internet marketing industry as a whole changes so often. There's a lot of new data, new information that's constantly coming out. For example, 3 weeks ago, obviously Google's changed to expanding the snippet count to roughly 300 or so. With all of these changes happening so often, how do you communicate that, or did you communicate that, and build that in your infrastructure for your staff to be able to stay on top of these ever-changing trends, so that they were able to build things, different software solutions to meet the needs of that, or anybody that was dealing with some of your customers. Can you kind of talk to that for a little bit?
Yeah, so I think we had basically at Moz, there's two communication channels that are heavily used for those types of discussions. One is Slack, where there's a few different channels depending on which group you want to talk to, and the other one is there's email lists internally. So one is SMEs, subject matter experts, which basically just means SEOs at Moz now, and a bunch of folks are on that list, and they'll take discussions and then they'll push them, push conclusions or research or whatever over to product. And then the other one is industry. There's an industry alias that sort of talks about what's going on in the industry, what's the news, those sorts of things. And that is, I think, has been reasonable for Moz. One of my regrets in building the company, I wish that I had hired, staffed, and trained a much more significant percentage of the company around SEO specifically. I think one of the great things Moz did is hired high quality people in a lot of their areas of expertise, right? So, great designers who understand the world of UX and UI, great product people who are good product managers, engineers who understand technology, those kinds of things. But upgrading their knowledge and passion for SEO has always been a struggle. I remember for years I'd give seminars about SEO at Moz, and attendance was very poor. Let's say, right? A handful of people would come to that sort of thing. They just it was interesting how building an SEO software company, people cared about the software, a lot of the other aspects, but not as much the SEO portion.
Right. Well, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess one of my last questions for you is, for those new marketers that are just beginning their careers or just starting out, what advice can you give them as they begin their careers?
Yeah, I think one of the smartest things that you can do for your career today, particularly if you're in digital marketing, is to specialize. And that is to say, find an area where you have some personal passion, develop some unique skills and experience in that area, and work to build a network and a reputation that broadcasts and amplify that niche experience, right? So I think it's really tough to say today, I'm an expert in SEO, and have everyone go, oh, okay, well, that person is very authoritative in SEO. Right. It is much easier to say, I am an expert in early stage consumer startup SEO. Oh, wow, okay, that is a unique niche. No, there's plenty of companies in that space, sure, but that's a hard one to tackle. It requires a whole different skill set than B2B or later stage or agency side or consultant stuff. But that is clearly a specialization. And if consumer businesses are what you love, and you love those early stage, and being very scrappy and designing sort of a content strategy from scratch, an SEO strategy from scratch, and you've got some people that you've worked with who you can point to and say, hey, they've been successful, so yeah, I can do this. That's a really powerful thing for your career, and I think that can certainly help you accelerate, a trajectory for what you want to accomplish in your professional life.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can't be everything to everybody, right?
Yeah, especially as this world gets bigger and bigger and more, more dense with talent. It's tougher and tougher to stand out in a field like digital marketing or SEO or social media marketing or content strategy or whatever it is. But specialization is a great way to do that.
Awesome. Well, Rand, that's all I had for you today. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor. I know you're leaving Moz in a few months and starting on your new venture. So good luck with everything. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on you. I know you also have a book coming out. Is that true?
That's right. Yeah. Lost and Founder is coming out in April.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll be on the lookout for it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Adam.
Ryan, I
Appreciate it.
appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Take care.